and go with our last speaker of the day. And that will be James Curry from Bayer Crop Science. And he's going to be talking about all the issues with glyphosate, basically litigation, legislative, and regulatory updates on it. So with that, I will give you James.
Thank you, Jerry. And I am going to open up my PowerPoint here. Hopefully, folks can see and hear me. So let me know if that's not the case. Jerry said, yes, my name is James Curry. I'm with Bayer Crop Science. I manage our state and local government affairs in the northwestern U.S., covering a region from North and South Dakota out towards the coast. And I'm a native Washingtonian. Currently serve as the president of Washington Friends of Farms and Forests and on the board of directors for Oregonians and for Food and Shelter, both organizations I'm sure you all are aware of. My background is in government affairs and lobbying. So I'm sure you all are excited to do a deep dive into the Electoral College today and voting irregularities in battleground states. And obviously, I'm kidding, Jerry. Please don't give me the hook yet. We are going to talk about glyphosate and the Roundup litigation, but I primarily want to talk first and foremost about the background. How did we get to where we're at today? Then we can talk a little bit about the regulatory status, and I know what's on most people's minds and what you hear about in the news, and that's an update on litigation and settlement. And then maybe towards the end, we'll talk a little bit about what might be next and issues from a big picture standpoint. But we'll try to run through some of this quickly. I know I'm standing between everyone and the end of the conference today and lunch. So first of all, I'm a legacy Monsanto employee, and I can tell you that the cultural change with Bayer has been a positive one for those of us who worked GMO issues forever and have dealt with this situation with Roundup for a number of years. And to Bayer's credit, you see we've done a direct-to-consumer advertising campaign we call This Is Why We Science. And we've made a big effort towards transparency. In fact, making all of the background studies that are used in the regulatory assessments of glyphosate-based products public. So NGOs, environmental groups, and others can actually see firsthand the studies that go into those regulatory assessments. And that we hope can help us from a public perception standpoint going forward. But taking a quick look at just the environmental and safety profile of glyphosate is really unmatched. It does not evaporate, it binds tightly to soil, it's not absorbed through the skin, and in fact, it's excreted in its entirety. And so you can see from this diagram, glyphosate inhibits a particular enzyme found only in plant cell production. And I don't have to tell folks in their homes right here on this call the benefits of it, but if we look at from an agricultural perspective, the environmental benefits are numerous. The low and no-till farming that's made possible by the Roundup Ready cropping system has greatly reduced greenhouse gas emissions, soil erosion, reducing water and fuel usage, and increasing carbon sequestration. In fact, from a productivity standpoint, we have studies that show a 30% reduction in production costs and about $130 billion increase in productivity and efficiency from the late 90s to the mid 2015s. So, I mean, just to give you a sense of perspective, if you went back and got rid of the Roundup Ready crop system, it would be the equivalent of taking all of the farmland in Iowa and Missouri out of production, to give you a sense of scale. So here's a quick snapshot of where we are today. And starting in the upper left, you can see an example of some of the regulatory bodies around the world that all agree, have for 4 decades and continue to this day, that glyphosate does not cause cancer and is safe when used according to the label. But of course, you have in 2015 an opinion from the International Agency for Research on Cancer, a subset of the World Health Organization. And that decision by IARC in 2015 to list glyphosate as a class 2 carcinogen is where we sort of kicked off the lawsuit bonanza that we still face today, which includes upwards of 125,000 suits filed, and you wonder why, and why does it continue to grow so much? Last year, we know that the plaintiff firm spent about $100 million in advertising for Roundup litigation. So their effort has been obviously to increase the pool of plaintiffs and increase the size of jury awards, and which is why we find ourselves in the position we do today in settlement talks, which I will get to down the road. The lower right corner, though, you can see, although this is somewhat dated, there have only been 3 jury verdicts in U.S. trials to date. They are actually all 3 on appeal now, and 0 conclusions have been reached and 0 payouts have been made as we continue to appeal those jury verdicts. But what is IARC? Well, it's important to think about what we always say from a scientific standpoint, that risk equals hazard times exposure. Well, the IARC looks only at one part of that equation, which is hazard. And that's why you find glyphosate categorized as a class 2 carcinogen in the same category as red meat, pickled vegetables, aloe vera lotion, and working the night shift. In fact, they've looked at over 800 chemicals, products, processes, and professions over the decades, and I think all but 1 have been found to have some level of cancer-causing attributes. What we like to point people to as the most comprehensive review, and I will go back 1 slide, as you can see in the lower left corner, the 2018 Ag Health Study by the National Cancer Institute followed 20,000 or 50,000 farm workers and licensed applicators over the course of 20 years and found no connection between glyphosate use and cancer. So here's the most recent set of statements last year from the EPA in their interim review decision that glyphosate is not likely to be carcinogenic, which is its most favorable conclusion, and there is no risk to public health from the application of glyphosate. And this is usually the chance where I take time to talk about what is cancer and what is non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, which is alleged in all of these suits. Well, cancer, we know, is a disease of the DNA. Well, why are our scientists and regulatory scientists so convinced that that's not a connection? Because there is no mechanism for glyphosate to enter the cell and interact with DNA. And for all cancers that we are aware of, there is usually the same toxin causing the same cancer repeatedly. If you think about asbestos and mesothelioma, for example, but non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, or NHL, is actually a collection of 60 different rare forms of cancer that there really is no clear environmental or hereditary connection out there in the available medical literature. So the plaintiff firms are largely working off of emotion and not science in the jury trial situation. If we look at just testing and oversight, the regulatory agencies develop the protocols that all companies must use in meeting these requirements. They must be reproducible, they must be validated, and they must be auditable. And so every adverse event is reported to the EPA in these studies. And in fact, Roundup has been off patent for more than 2 decades. And so you have 6 registrants altogether that have glyphosate-based herbicides that have done the same battery of tests and have reached the same conclusions. And once again, Bayer has decided to make these studies available to the public so that those with concerns and NGOs that are most critical can have a chance to look at the science themselves. So at this time, I'd like to just kind of leave you here with the view of all the regulators around the world that have reached the same conclusions. And it's a chance to maybe talk a little bit about update on where we stand settlement-wise and with the litigation. A lot of this, for legal reasons, we don't put in writing, but let me just give you a quick rundown. So as you're likely aware, in June, the company announced a potential settlement agreement with most of the plaintiff firms representing most of the cases. And we did this at that time because there would be Of course, no admission of liability or wrongdoing on behalf of the company. And though we still believe Roundup is not carcinogenic and it's safe when used according to the label, there are real reasons why we would want to put this unfortunate chapter behind us, even to the tune of a $10 billion settlement. Number one, this would resolve most of the current claims. Number two, it would create a mechanism, which I'll talk about shortly, that would resolve potential future litigation and those that are not covered by about the 88,000 cases in the first class of the settlement. It would create the independent class science panels, which is sort of a novel legal concept. And it would be financially reasonable for the company to undertake when you view it against the financial risks of continued multi-year litigation and the related impacts to our reputation and business. So, and finally, it allows us to focus fully on the supply of food and healthcare and return the conversation back to safety and utility of glyphosate-based herbicides. Now, shortly after that settlement was announced, the federal judge in the Northern District of California, Judge Chabria, he has, to that point, about 1,500 federal cases consolidated in his court, and mandated that both sides get together and mediate toward a resolution of those cases, which we did willingly. And as we said from the beginning, if we can have some finality and it's financially reasonable, we would consider that. Well, what the Judge Chabria did not like after that announcement in June is not comfortable with this creation of independent class science panels to look at the outstanding litigation and any future suits that might come. And what this concept was a way to put two representatives from the scientific community supported by the company and two supported by plaintiffs, where they would elect a fifth person, tie-breaking vote to actually look at the science behind the claims, look at any potential connection between NHL and glyphosate use patterns, and then decide if cases can proceed forward in court or not. And the judge at the time said this was had constitutional questions, and it is a novel legal concept, but we continued to work throughout the summer and fall on finding a resolution that the judge would be comfortable with, because again, we need some sort of finality, and there is a real frustration from the defense standpoint of how the jury verdicts went. Jury trials are largely based on emotion, and did not provide enough opportunity to actually look at the science. And even in some cases, most of the cases, courts did not allow even the admission of evidence that the EPA has determined glyphosate is not carcinogenic. So as of actually Monday of this week was the deadline that the judge had set for reaching an update to the settlement. That deadline has passed, and the judge has said, well, we will allow cases to, again, proceed forward unless we can reach a settlement. And we have an appearance before the judge on November 9th. There is some hope, though. The mediator, an attorney in DC, Ken Feinberg, well known in tobacco litigation and other big settlements, is managing the mediation and has said as of yesterday that the judge should be rest assured that it won't be necessary to send any more cases to trial because they'll be settled. So we are positive about that, but again, we don't have the details to be able to talk about what specific changes will be made to the settlement. We are hoping that we can get there. In the meantime, we continue to appeal the 3 jury verdicts that have occurred in California. One in state court, the Johnson verdict, that was recently appealed all the way to the California State Supreme Court, where they have rejected our petition to have the case heard. And we will continue to appeal that, as well as the Hardiman and Piliad cases that were decided in jury verdicts in federal court. The company is prepared to appeal these all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court if necessary, And that was all part of the settlement agreement as well, that we would continue to appeal because we stand by the science. And in each of these cases, large jury verdicts upwards of $280 million and more, all awards have been reduced in post-trial motions and reduced throughout the appeals process. So a lot happening right now. It's very fluid, but that's where we stand, and it's helpful to maybe look at some of the impacts that we're seeing in the public sphere. One of them would be the state of New York. This summer became the first state to ban the use of glyphosate in public parks. That was a bill that was passed in the New York legislature, and we've seen a lot of local activity at the city and county level similar to that over the last several years. But I think most relevant for folks on this call would be to think about the cost impact of moving to alternatives, and many times the alternatives to glyphosate are either harsher in terms of an environmental chemical profile, or they are mechanical. And in fact, we have seen first in Bernalillo County, New Mexico, that's where Albuquerque is. County decided to ban the use of glyphosate in city parks, despite their own analysis that it would increase costs to the county by over $1 million. They were willing to budget for that and move forward. Most recently in Ventura County, California, they did a cost comparison to the proposal there to eliminate glyphosate use at the county, and very interestingly enough, their own analysis in the impact on the roads and transportation department would be an increase from $8,500 a year to about $177,000 a year, and in watershed protection, an increase from $55,000 a year to $2.2 million a year. So you can see that even as local governments struggle with public perception issues on this matter as well, and look at budgeting forward, they understand a lot of this is going to increase costs, and they have to be prepared for it. The company remains committed to the chemistry, though, and then I would note that last year we received federal approval from Bureau of Land Management to break ground on our new phosphorus mine in southeast Idaho in Caldwell Canyon. This will supply upwards of 4 decades of phosphorus that we then extract and refine into elemental phosphate that begins the entire process for the creation of Roundup and other glyphosate-based herbicides. We would not continue forward with such an investment if we thought the product would not be available to the public. But we do understand that there is a perception out there that it may not be. We continue to fight it and defend it in court, and hopefully we'll have some settlements to announce going forward here shortly. So this is part of a larger conversation of pesticides as a public health issue, and I think it's incumbent upon all of us to talk about it comfortably, because pesticides have been part of this 30-year increase in life expectancy over the last 100 years. That includes water sanitation, pasteurization, vaccination, use of antibiotics, and so forth. And we have a lot to be proud of, both just in our side of the industry, but in general, the use of pesticides is under attack. And the American civil justice system is what it is, and we are trying to work our way through that and put the issue behind us in a way that will, number one, make the commercials stop, but number two, allow customers and those in the industry know that the product will be available going forward. At the same time, Bayer is investing about $5 billion over the next 10 years in research and development, much of that going towards finding alternatives and newer and better chemistries. But the reality is that there really isn't anything that matches the environmental and safety profile of glyphosate-based herbicides at this time, despite what you might hear in the press and what large-scale mass tort litigation might suggest. So with that, I'd be happy to try to answer any questions. I know we've got a little bit of time left for Q&A. This last slide just takes a look at some of the statements that have been made around the world, either from Canada, Australia, and our own US EPA. But rest assured that the science is strong and we stand strongly behind it. Hopefully we can find a resolution here to the US litigation that allows us to close that chapter. And if you want more information directly from the company, glyphosatelitigationfacts.com or bayer.com/glyphosate. You can reach out to me anytime and I'll do my best to answer what we're facing going forward. But that's a quick little look at the status of glyphosate litigation, and hope you find it useful and be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. So I have, what are the effects of exposure on the soil microbiome and gut microbiome? And I could just be saying that so wrong.
Well, unfortunately for the question asker, my background is not from a scientific standpoint, but if you wouldn't mind emailing that to my email up on the screen here, I'd be happy to put you in contact with someone who can, because we stand by the environmental and safety profile 100%, and be happy to help you connect with somebody who can answer that directly.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks, James. And I think with that,